Thank you, Madam President. This week, General Motors is set to lay off thousands of workers in Lordstown, Ohio, and around the country. Tomorrow is the day that most of the first shift lose their jobs. Several months ago, the second shift lost their jobs. A couple of years ago, the third shift lost their jobs, totaling about 4,500 human beings with families. What's the president's response? He boasts nonsense and rubs salt in these workers' wounds. Last week, he said these were his words, as if he didn't know about Lordstown and Hamtramck and other places. He said, "We have car companies opening up in Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and so many other places," unquote. I don't know where those mystery factories are in Ohio that the president brags about. They aren't in Lordstown, where people are about to lose those jobs. President Trump's remarks, his uncaring feelings, his ignorance of even knowing what's happened in Ohio, the state that he seems to most credit for his victory, his remarks are a slap in the face to the workers and the fact that he's done nothing to help. Think about the workers who are out of a job at the end of this week. Think about their families. Think about the other families in Lordstown that are about to lose customers. Senator Portman and I spent a lot of time working with General Motors, visiting a restaurant near the plant, talking to the workers there who know their jobs are affected as fewer Lordstown workers come to that restaurant. Multiply that hardware store, police and fire jobs, and teacher jobs, and all that afflict the valley, the Mahoning Valley, when GM does what it does. Remember what Donald Trump promised people in communities like Youngstown. He said he'd fight for them, he'd fight for their jobs. Last year, he told the people of the Mahoning Valley. Mahoning Valley is Youngstown, Warren, Lordstown, that area. He said, don't move. These are the president's words. Don't move. Don't sell your house. We're going to fill up those factories or rip them down and build new ones. Then he said, we never again will sacrifice Ohio jobs in those in other states to enrich other countries. Think about that. The President of the United States comes in the midst of these GM layoffs and said, don't sell your house, don't move, we're going to fill those factories up, we're going to rip them, if we don't fill them up, we're going to rip them down and build new ones. Then went on to say workers will come back, jobs will come back from these countries. Then, even when I called him and talked to him about the second shift layoff, he didn't even know about it. I'm not sure what his staff's telling him. Maybe Fox doesn't cover these stories, but the mainstream media does. These are real stories. These aren't political opinions. 4,500 people lost their jobs, and the president doesn't seem to know or care. Those weren't the only promises he made. Over and over again, candidate Trump, then President Trump promised American auto workers he'd fight for their jobs. In Warren, just a few miles from Lordstown in 2016, if I'm elected, you won't lose one plant, I promise you that. If I'm elected, you won't lose one plant, I promise you that. In Michigan, fall of 2016, another state with a lot of auto jobs, we'll bring back your auto manufacturing business like you've never seen it before. February 2017, he promised again, a lot of jobs are going to come back into Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania, and all the places have been hurt so badly. In March 2017, the assault on the American auto industry, believe me, is over. Last year, after GM announced the layoffs, he said, Ohio is going to replace these jobs in 2 minutes. Ohio is going to replace these jobs in 2 minutes. Well, first of all, why would he say this stuff? Second, does he not ever follow the news? Does his staff not tell him what's happened in the 7th largest state in the country, the state that he in part credits for his electoral? You know, he lost the popular vote by 3 million votes. He won the Electoral College because of Ohio and because of a couple of other, 2 or 3 other states. But wouldn't he know this is going on? Wouldn't he know that a valley of 450,000 people just lost during his time since the election, has lost 4,500 jobs just in that plant alone, and another 5,000 manufacturing jobs that make the components that go into the Chevy Cruze, and another 5 to 6 to 8 to 10,000 jobs. Nobody knows for sure how many he will lose in restaurants and hardware stores and car dealerships and cuts in public dollars because there's the local governments have lost tax revenue, so fewer police and fire and street cleaners and people that work in the cities and the counties and the school districts. Mr. President, the workers who are going to be out of a job by this week are still waiting. These people trusted him. President Trump did really well in the election in this valley of 450,000 people. He did really well. He did better than
He did better than Republicans ever do. But what did he do for them after he made those promises? Instead of working to save their jobs, he turned around. I mean, this is one of these statements I'm going to make that is provably true, but almost doesn't even make sense that it could be. His tax bill says if you do your production in Lordstown, Ohio, you pay a 21% tax rate. But if you move your production to Mexico, you pay a 10.5% tax rate. So in other words, because of Trump's tax law, that frankly, Mr. President, was written down the hall here in Senator McConnell's office, but with the president's signature on it, under the president's tax law, these companies get a 50% off coupon for moving overseas. Think about that. These companies, they move overseas, they get a 50% off coupon on their taxes. I talked to the president about that. I asked him to reconsider that law, and he said, where'd that law come from? And I said, well, Mr. President, it was in your tax bill, and you signed it. And then I talked to him about the American Jobs Act, how he could fix this. And here's what the bill does. Customers who buy cars made in the U.S. get a $3,500 discount at the dealership. If the American car is electric or a plug-in hybrid, they get an even bigger discount. These are the cars GM says it was going to start making instead of the Cruze. There's no reason they can't make them in Lordstown instead of Mexico. Second, companies that cut the number of American jobs they had on the day the GOP tax bill passed, if they move those jobs overseas, they lose their tax break. So they lose their tax breaks, they lose that 50% off coupon under my bill, the American Jobs Act, and then that money that they have to pay because they lose their tax break goes to car consumers at the dealerships, meaning they'll buy more American cars. So what will happen is we'll actually do what candidate Trump said he wanted to do and promised that he would do, is bring American jobs back. But you know, this phony populism, this president that says, you know, I'm the worker's best friend, I fight for these jobs. Well, it's this kind of phony populism. But you know something, Madam President? Populism's never racist. Populism is never anti-Semitic. Populism doesn't divide people. Populism doesn't push people down to lift people up. Populism doesn't give tax cuts to rich people and then turn around and cut Medicare and Head Start. Populism fights for people, fights to lift all workers up. That's what we're not seeing here now. So I'm calling on the president again to try keeping his promises and actually fighting for auto workers, fighting for these communities like Lordstown. Help us pass the American Jobs Act. End the tax cut for corporations to shut down American plants and move jobs overseas. Take this coupon away, this 50% off coupon that some of the richest people and biggest corporations in this country enjoy when they send jobs overseas. Because if you love your country, you fight for the people who make it work.